Hello and welcome to the next in our round of podcasts for FSGB, Fleet Service GB. I'm Polly Hill and I am delighted to welcome Andy Fay from SRL Traffic Systems. How are you? Welcome.
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. You're a head of transport, fleet manager?
I am, the head of transport for SRL. I've been with the business since June of 2023.
And how did you first get into fleet management? Let's dive in.
So, quite a while ago, 20 years ago, my ex-partner, had given birth to our first daughter, and we were struggling with childcare. So I went working nights at a distribution centre, just doing a bit of warehouse work. And at the time, one company ran the warehouse and another company ran the transport. And there was a lot of talks going in that both were up for tender, etc. And me being a young lad at the time wasn't really interested. As long as I got paid on a Friday, I didn't care who I reported to, in all honest. And I walked in to start my shift one day, and the place was really empty, and our management team pulled us all to one side and said the tender had been decided and a certain business had won the transporting and the warehouse, and as part of it, a few of the people who worked for the transport business at the time had just upped and left.
Wow.
Just said they didn't want to work for the company who was going to be running transport now, and they left. So they just basically said to us, has anyone got any kind of experience working within transport or any knowledge? And I was like, well, I'm quite good geography-wise, and I've got a bit of knowledge about certain things, so I'm happy to help. And so they threw me in a little office, and it just had a pile of delivery notes, and he was basically saying, the next driver who comes in, give him these runs, sort out who's going where, and we'll go from there. And I never left.
Amazing. I bet it was a bit like wading through treacle, wasn't it, in those first days?
And I would have drivers coming in to me saying, I've not got the time to do that run. And me being a young lad, quite stubborn, I'd be like, why not? And I didn't fully understand the driver's hours laws, and me being, again, quite stubborn, just thought that they were trying to pull my leg, or thinking, we're in for an easy ride here because this lad's not got a clue. And I kind of took it a bit to heart. So I went home, and just off my own back, I started reading up on the driver's hours laws and what you needed to do to be a traffic operator as such, and what we needed to get in place. And went back in the following night, and I had a list of all these different things, and started looking more at the planning and how it was done. And I just kind of started really enjoying it. And I met a lad who we became very close, and he was he kind of planned the work, and then I would kind of help with it. But he was in the process of leaving, and he left a few months later to go and work for DHL.
Yeah.
On the Howden Kitchens contract, planning work. And a couple of months later he rang me, and he was like, "You're still interested in transport?" He said, "We've got an opening here." He said, "You will just literally be helping me out, sorting out all the paperwork, going through the PODs, ringing the drivers, make sure deliveries are done, etc." So I was like, yeah, I quite fancy that. And from there, I've just worked my way up.
Yeah.
I started off, like I said, as POD and helping the planner, to planning, to then doing backhauls, then doing line management. And I've been really fortunate that everywhere I've been, I've always had a transport manager or a senior figure within the business that I was working, who have kind of always took me under their wing and seen a bit of potential in me.
So you've literally learned on the job.
On the job.
And how old? You say you were young at the beginning of that job, which you sort of fell into. How old were you then?
So I think I was 21.
Wow. So really
21.
really
Not a clue really
wet behind the ears.
what I
Yeah.
wanted
Yeah.
to do, or what my plan was with regards to my career going forward. Like I said, it was just at the time, it was a job that fitted around my social life and the fact of having like my daughter.
Having childcare. Yeah, absolutely.
And then I was quite fortunate within DHL, like I said, that I had people who kind of invested a lot of time into me and they took me with them. So like I said, I started on like the Harding Kitchens contracts. I then went over to the SCA Hygiene and ran the night shift there. And it was same again, just make sure everything was running smooth with the transport. The planning was done on the day. But then I got more involved with like the working time directive, drivers' hours laws. And I kind of thought to myself, this is something I could see myself getting into more and
There's an
like kind of
appetite for
making a
this.
career
Yeah.
out of it. And I looked up to people who I worked with, like I said, my previous transport managers. They invested a lot of time in me and listened to me when I made suggestions, which made me think like, you know, maybe I have like got a bit of potential
something
to
here.
go
Yeah.
forward.
And actually, it's not something which you go to a career fair when you're at school that they say,
No,
why don't you become a fleet manager?
I always joke, like, I used to joke with my dad, obviously being not the tallest person. Like, my dad used to say, what do you want to be when you're older? Like, well, I love horse racing, so I may as well be a jockey, haven't I? And he'd be like, well, that's definitely not going to happen, son, is it? So you need to look at something, what you're going to be, what you're going to do. And every young lad is like, oh, well, I play rugby as a kid, so I want to be a rugby player. And I'm all about the chances of so many people making it along that.
Most of us fall into something, don't we? And like learn on the job, really. Yeah.
So then I think I always kind of thought, well, if I'm going to go and do a job, I want something that kind of engages me and keeps me on my toes, and no day's ever the same. And I definitely got that with transport, yeah. So yeah.
I've worked with FSGB for 2 years and I didn't know the fleet industry before, and it's incredible how much more there is to it. I wasn't aware of all of those rules and things, and just the planning that goes into it. Obviously, you're now working for SRL. I'm just reading here some figures. 160 vehicles, varying types, 157 drivers. I know these might flex a little bit, across a national network of 27 depots. When you stepped into that role, which is a sizable operation, what were your first goals and was it daunting?
I wouldn't say it was daunting, because when I joined the business, I was reported to a guy, Dave Ingleby, his name was, and I worked like very close with Dave, and I had such a really good relationship with him. And I used to say to him, I don't expect to walk into the business and everything be running smoothly, because there'd be no point bringing me into the business.
Yeah.
You've brought me into the business, which, as we've identified, there's things that need to be done better, and that's what I'll do. And with working in the industry for so long, and like I said, I've worked right up to my transport manager, I've done my international CPC. There's not a lot I've not dealt with within transport, and the restraints and the challenges that come within transport and working within certain industries, whether that be from how driving and drivers in general have evolved, like, and a lot of the time, like when I was younger, a lot of the drivers were a lot more in the senior years, but now you're seeing a lot more drivers coming through of a younger age. And I think some of the senior drivers probably didn't like the fact that transport was evolving and things were going a bit more digital, like through used vehicle checks. Like when I first started working transport, everything was done on paper, planning was done on paper, checks were done on paper, defect reporting, everything. And now it's becoming a bit more digital, and a lot of people will see the benefits, but there's a lot of people who may struggle with that. So yeah, I think joining SRL, I knew there was challenges, but it wasn't as if there was drastic changes needed to be done. We just needed to get a grip of certain things and explain to certain people why we do what we do and why we need to follow these procedures. And I think I was lucky enough that I had the support of the board, my colleagues, the people I went to speak to. I remember one of the first things I said I would always do is I would go and visit depots, introduce myself and spend time with people and understand like the issues that they're having and seeing whether that has an effect on what we're trying to achieve. And yeah, to be honest, it's transport is the most basic thing when it's running right. It's just, you just need to make sure that you follow the correct procedures, you dot the I's and you cross the T's, and you don't deviate from anything. Because the minute you kind of relax on something, whether it be a vehicle defect or a driver who's getting so many infringements, if you start to relax on that, then you're just opening a can of worms, and it doesn't take long for things to snowball.
So you mentioned the driver specifically. I know that you're hot on driver safety and well-being, right? There's a quote here I've got from you, is that it's a prime consideration for you. In this sort of fast-paced world and the way everything moves really, really quickly, how do you embed that positive driving culture and not just pay lip service to it? Because I think a lot of companies probably do.
I think, like I said, from being in the industry for so long, I've been in businesses at probably at a more junior level, and I've seen people have a bit of a relaxed view when it came to vehicle safety or maintenance, and you would have a driver reporting a defect, and I've heard in the backgrounds a senior figure say to them, right, just take the vehicle out, it'll be okay, and stuff like that. And it's took other people to step in and say, no, that's not how we do things. And I think spending time with the drivers and explaining to them that it's not just the transport departments or the fleet departments that have full control over this. It goes right down to driver performance and the checking of the vehicle and stuff like that. So if a driver, you have to push them to do a vehicle check. Now, they may think it's a waste of time, but if you explain to them, then if they are involved in an accident and they get asked, right, have you done your vehicle checks this morning, and they can't prove it, the onus then falls back onto them. And it's explaining to people that we will do everything we can to protect you, and I will do everything I can, like, as the head of transport, to protect the business. But some part of this the drivers need to be held responsible.
Yeah.
And they're doing it to not only protect themselves, but to protect other road users. And I found a lot of the time when I first joined certain businesses, I would sit down with drivers and say, like, tell me your issues, tell me your concerns. And a lot of the time they would come back and say, oh, the vehicles are a mess. And then when you dig deeper into that, some may have valid points.
Yeah.
But if you're driving around in a vehicle and you're not doing your daily checks, and then you're not only doing your checks, but you're not reporting defects, how are we supposed to keep on top of these vehicles?
And so how do you report? How do they do these vehicle checks? Is this using the FSGB?
Yeah, FSGB app, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So, and one thing we drilled into from a start of when I joined SRL was not only to make sure that people are doing their checks, but to make sure they're doing the checks sufficiently.
Yeah.
It's not just a tick box exercise to fly through the app and spend a minute. Go around your vehicle and check. And what I do is, and this isn't to catch people out, it's more to educate people, is I will do a depot visit, and I will look on the system at the vehicles that we have allocated to that depot, and I'll pick a couple out, I'll print off the daily check that they've done for that day. And then what I'll do is I'll go and have a walk around the vehicle. And it's not to highlight to people or to undermine people. It's to explain to them that if I see that could potentially lead to something worse, or it could be, if you are, God forbid, involved in an accident, someone else may do exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's about protecting the people, not only the people who work for us and protecting the business, but protecting other road users. And that's something I am very big on. I understand we all have a job to do, and no matter what you're delivering, whether it be traffic lights, food, animal feed, I've worked in all industries, and everyone has KPIs, and we've got to ensure that we service our customer, but we've got to ensure that we do it safely and securely, and that is primary and should always be. And I'm fortunate that the senior team who I report into now, they are very much on the same wavelength as me, is that health and safety will always
Got to be
a
paramount, and it has always got to come from the top. I know our chairman at FSGB, Jeffrey Bray, has always said it's got to start at the top. It has to be at the most senior level, because if that culture is right there, it's much easier for people like you to do your job further down the line. So there's a recent case study published at FSGB about SRL and your work together. One of the things it mentions is a driver induction day. Could you tell me a little bit about that and what it does and what the purpose of it is?
Yeah, so early 2025, how the process used to work, we would have new starters who would join the business, and while learning what to do with regards to the day-to-day role, we would have regional trainers who would then spend time with the drivers in the vehicles. But what we decided to do was, we decided to seek a bit of help externally. And so obviously reached out to Fleet Services, who then put us in contact with someone else. And what we decided was our new induction process would all be held centrally at our hub in Solihull.
Okay.
We have like a main depot in Solihull, and this would involve company induction and driver training, because we could recruit someone into our business, and for all we know, they may have only ever driven around in a little car. Mm-hmm. And then we're expecting them to go out in a 3.5 ton vehicle loaded with traffic lights or batteries and potentially towing a trailer. So we identified that we need to look at investing in our staff, because that would not only show how we want to be as a business, which is we are heavily investing in our staff, but also to help us with regards to our insurance claims and show that we are doing something to enable us to be safer on the road.
Yeah.
So this induction day involves a training school coming in, and they start right from the basics. They go through everything from how lack of sleep can affect your driving, dehydration, things like that. They go through videos and ask us to give our opinion on who we think was wrong in the video and what could have been done differently. And then there's a physical part of the training day where they will take drivers out in a vehicle, just take them on a route, identify any concerns that they may have, what someone should be doing better. And then there's time spent on hooking up a trailer, ensuring it's hooked up correctly, all the electrics are working, and reversing the trailer, because reversing the trailer is quite an art.
It's really hard, yeah.
And I was on the first induction day, and I consider myself to be quite a decent driver, and I've driven various sizes of vehicles, and I learned an awful lot on that training day, and it brought me down to earth.
Yeah.
I believe me, I was a bit like, maybe I'm not as good as I actually thought I was. And I think that if I was joining a business and I had this induction day set out for me, and it shows that, first and foremost, doing a full company induction and explaining what drives the business and what our goals are, and then having a full day on driver training and showing that this is what you could be doing, but we're going to help you to ensure that you're as prepared as possible before you go out onto the road. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I hope a lot more businesses do it, because I think we've seen huge improvements from an insurance claims view and just driver performance in general. We partner with another business, Samsara, for all our driver telematics, and this monitors driver performance, behaviour, and we've seen huge improvements from that since we've been doing the driver training day, because you will always get the one person who thinks, I don't need to listen to this, I'm fine. But there's a lot of people who will benefit from it,
Yeah.
and really do. And the feedback we've had from it, like from when we've asked certain people, and they've been like, it's really good, it's really engaging, and I've come away from that driver training day feeling like I've learned something.
Yeah. And actually being considered. I think that's the thing as well. You know, we're doing this so you get home to your family. So you're safe as well as everybody else on the road. I think it just shows an investment in those people. So do you think it's worked out saving money, do you think, as well?
Well, yeah, I would think our driver performance, which obviously then has an effect on your fuel consumption, and like one of the main things is our insurance claims.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big concern for the industry at the moment, isn't
Yeah.
it? Because premiums are just soaring.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, and given the industry and the number of vehicles across such a widespread number of depots that we have, it can be quite hard to kind of keep on top of it. And we know accidents happen, but doing everything we can to prepare people and to make sure that they're in the right mindset when they're leaving to go out on a job, that can only help. That can really be a positive.
Fantastic. This is the tricky one, and I ask everybody this one. With your drivers being continually assessed and their performance measured, how do you strike that balance between keeping them compliant but also making sure they don't feel micromanaged and big brother?
It's like in any walk of life, isn't it? I always, when I first went into transport managing, my old transport manager said to me, he said, there will be people that you will need to have a firm word with. He said, and you will need to be strong, firm, and do not back down. And then there's other people that you will need to put an arm around the shoulder and be a bit more comforting and explain to them in a bit of a softly manner. He said, but as long as your outcome and you get what you want out of that, there's no right or wrong way of doing it. And it's the same with driving management. If we explain to everyone that the reason we have the telematics in our vehicles and we do all these things is for safety.
Yeah.
That is paramount. And again, is not just for our staff, it's for everyone who's using the road. And if we have to pull someone up for whether it be their driver behaviour or not following procedure, we're pulling them people up because they're not doing what is required of them, that the business has set out and we have made clear from day one, this is what is expected of you. So it's not that we would ever micromanage people, because we're all far too busy to be micromanaging people, but we expect competent people to behave at a certain level.
Yeah.
And we have set our standard. So if people fall below that standard, then they will be pulled up and they will be questioned onto why they're not performing at a level that our business expects them. So I wouldn't say it's micromanaging. It's if you fall below that line, you're going
That's your KPI. That's
our
where you should be.
KPI.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's got to be almost flipped to a point of, well, if I'm being micromanaged, it's because I'm not doing something right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a very good relationship with my seniors, and I know what is expected of me on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and I do my job. If I got to a point where I felt like I was being micromanaged. It was because I wasn't doing what I was previously doing, or I'd let my standards slip.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's something that we need to look at. We should take, whenever anyone invests in us, and I go back to driver training, some people would look at the training and think, as I said, I don't need to go on driver training. Why am I being put on driver training? My driving's fine. Take it as a positive. Any training should be took as a positive.
Yeah. And like you say, it would be good if a lot more companies
Oh, yeah.
did the same.
Yeah.
Safer roads for everybody. So you've got extensive, experience in the industry, and you must have seen it change significantly across those years. From your 21 startup point, looking ahead, what do you think the next big challenge is going to be for the fleet industry?
I think obviously EV is one that's going to be being looked at a lot more. Like I said, transport in general is developing. The software that people use, a lot more people are using digital checks, etc. And I think it's making sure that we keep on top of that, and obviously the standards that are set out by the DVS and everything, to ensure that everyone falls in line with that and keeps up to date. Like our business, we have FORS accreditation, and the standards are there's always slight changes to the standards each year. And I find that I constantly check up on where I need to be and where we need to be as a business. But one thing I've always said is, to pass an audit, you prepare all your information, you get everything ready. But if you should always be audit ready.
Yes, yeah.
And that's a huge thing. And I think in the industry that we work in, especially, like I said, I've worked from where I am now with multiple types of vehicles, to solely HGVs, to class 2 vehicles I've worked with. But you as long as you keep your standards set and you work to them and you are always audit ready, then whatever changes come, you're ready to react to that, and almost you can be proactive with certain things. I think more the changes are coming. We are going to be going down EV. It's just natural. We can see it being pushed and pushed, but we've got to make sure that we're ready to understand that the challenges that come with that carrying capacity, etc., of vehicles, which you may think, all right, well, this EV vehicle, it'll save you so much on fuel. That's great, and I understand 100% why we're doing it. But though these vehicles can't carry the same capacity as the previous vehicles, are you going to be wasting as much time in hours? So it's how it's going to affect businesses that way.
And they're so much heavier, aren't they? So how does that affect what licensing there is for the drivers and the road condition, which we have a massive problem with?
And then there's obviously the infrastructure with regards to, like I said, you use our business, for instance. We've got 28 depots. You've got to ensure you have all the correct equipment to ensure that we can charge these vehicles.
Yeah.
So I think it's exciting times, and like I said, from when I first ever walked into a transport office, transport in general has evolved so much, but you learn to deal with it, and that's part of being a head of transport. You embrace the change.
Yeah, fantastic. If a new head of transport is listening right now, so they're still, when you first got into it, that young man beginning, and they're faced with a fleet of vehicles and drivers with low driver compliance and perhaps some poor safety records, what's the first bit of advice you would give them?
Set your standards at a level that you are comfortable with, and you know that you can go home at night knowing that if something were to happen, you have set the bar.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, given the industry we work in, the amount of people that we deal with, there will be people who don't do things correctly. But if you have your procedures in place and your standards are set high and you do not deviate from that, no matter how much pressure you're under from whether it be senior management, a customer, if you set your standards and understand what you need, what you know needs to be done to run a transport operations efficiently and safely, then that's the level you work to. Do not deviate from the plan. Just do it once, and like I said, it'll just open a can of worms. But you have to be thick-skinned, because everything is your fault. Vehicles breaking down, it's the transport manager's fault. Deliveries running late, it's the transport manager's fault. Customers not on site when the driver gets there, it's the transport manager's fault. A crash on the motorway which causes out severe delays, it's the transport manager's fault. These are some of the things you hear throughout. But like I said, if you set your bar from the start and people understand where you stand at this, and that you will not be kind of manipulated by people who think, oh well, all right, he's got a ball tie, but we'll get that delivery out anyway. No, if you stand your ground and you understand that, yeah, you've got to try and at times spin plates, and at times you will think we're not going to get all this out with all these issues, but there is always a way. But you've still got to ensure you do it safely. That's what I would pass on.
So set the bar
and don't deviate.
And don't deviate from the plan. Can you tell me, just to finish up, really, what FSGB does with, to partner with you? How do they support you? And is there anybody in particular in the business who's been supportive?
I remember when I joined SRL, and I've been quite open to this with Hope, Sarah, and other people. When I joined, I had a few meetings with different people within the business and asked about FSGB. And the feedback, I would say, wasn't the greatest. So I went down at the time for my first meeting down to FSGB with our previous fleet manager to do the introduction. And I had a list of concerns. And don't get me wrong, there was a few things that could have been done better, but a lot of the things that I highlighted, Fleet Services and the answer to straight away. And some of it came back to that SRL hadn't been following procedure correctly. So, why is this vehicle off the road so long? Well, it's come in for the defects, but then we found these other defects, which then we need to order parts. I think for FSGB to be so proactive and forthcoming, given again the size of our operation, how far across the country it's spread, including Ireland. Whenever I raise something, and I am quite pedantic at times, and I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I'll chase things, but I only ever have to email once, and I get a response. Like, I joined the business and Barnaby came in, I think around the same time, maybe slightly before or slightly after. The lad is on top of everything. Honestly, I ask him a question and he'll go out of his way, and I never expect, I will email him on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
And to me, if he doesn't get back to me Friday afternoon, I know he'll get back to me Monday. And I'll get an email off him on Friday night, and I'm like, you didn't need to send me an email at 10 o'clock on a Friday night. I understand, we've all got lives. But the team are so approachable as well. I deal a lot with Hull, Danny, Barney, as I've said. Even if there's something urgent and I need to ask Sarah something, I'll drop her a WhatsApp or a ringer. She gets straight back to me. And I think that level of service across such a widespread organisation is fantastic. And we do have issues. It's transport. We will have issues with garages. But one thing I always found, and I always drilled into my team when I worked in general haulage, and that is the worst thing you can do to a customer is not reply to them or try and fob them off. Be honest, and even if that means you're going to get 5 minutes of earache, at least they know you're honest. And that's one thing I do get. There's uncomfortable conversations that we've had to have regarding vehicles or garages or the issues that we're having, but honesty, and that goes a very long way with me. I'm very honest, and I've had to deliver bad news at times, and it's the worst feeling when you're going into a meeting or getting ready for a phone call that you know you're going to upset someone. But honesty goes a long way with me, and I think that's one thing that FSGB prides themselves on. Is the communication is fantastic, but they're honest as well. They won't try and sugarcoat anything. It's straight to the point.
Straight to the point.
This is the issue. This is what we're having, and that's all I ask.
And of course, they've got the technology and the data to be able to answer the questions one way or the other. If it's not a favourable answer, at least you know what it is. So I think that aligns really beautifully with their mantra, which is making service personal. It's really lovely to hear. And quite often people say that, don't they? Quite a lot. I work in marketing, so a lot of people would say they make their service personal. FSGB,
Yeah,
absolutely do. Would you agree with that?
yeah. I joined and I got set up on the hub, and there's a few things that I wanted, just like to be able to access quickly, like accident data, claims data, VORs, etc. And they created my own management dashboard. And what I've been able to do with that is I then feed that out to our regional directors. They have access to everything within their region. The regional managers the same. The depot supervisors have access to everything within their depot. So what we've been able to do is, because FSGB supported me when I started and gave me all these tools, I've been able to then assist other people. And it makes, so when I go to depots, I'll say, right, log onto the system. This is your vehicles, this is your SMR spend. And when you show people figures and facts, they're far more engaging.
Yeah.
Whereas if you just talk off a piece of paper or just talk to them in general, they'll listen, but when you show facts and figures, you can't really deviate from that. It's
there. And of course, FSGB, I know, are constantly updating and investing in the software hub and the app to develop it further. Andy, I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for telling me all about you and SRL, and we'd love to see you again sometime.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
for having me. Thank you.